We are recording this 9:30 call. Good morning and welcome. It is Tuesday, July 8th, and we realized that our email system, Salsa, did not actually send the message of the 9:30 call this week. It said it did, and this has happened before. And typically the messages do go out, but we apologize for that if folks did not get our weekly email. We had some folks check in yesterday through chat. But today we're excited to have the teams from New Bedford and Somerville here. Okay, that's good. And then tomorrow we'll have sharing the mic. And then on Thursday we'll have Joe Diamond from the Mass Cap Association, who will give us an update on the Poverty Commission that was kind of made up of the legislators and other folks, outside folks, led by Senator Sal DiDomenico and Representative Marjorie Decker, who we did have at one point on the 9:30 call to kind of give us thank you. Neri is putting the calendar into the chat. And so good morning. We'll get right to it. So I know we have folks from the teams from New Bedford and Somerville. Our first question for everybody who joins us is for each of you to tell us a little bit about you and how you came to be in your current role. And then we're excited to hear about your cross-community connection that you had earlier this year.
Shall I start?
Sure.
I'm Sarah Rose. I'm from the United Way of Greater New Bedford. I'm the Chief Impact Officer, and I've become very interested in early education and care after spending 10 years as a teacher and now working for United Way. I've seen kids come to first grade well prepared, and I just know what a leg up that is. Kathleen, I'm going to switch it to you.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Kathleen Bailer. Right now, I'm the Director of Early Education and Care in Somerville, and I've spent the last 30 years making my way across Massachusetts from Western Mass to Eastern Mass here as a teacher, curriculum designer, consultant, filmmaker, director, principal, and now in my role. And my work is grounded in equity, high quality instruction, and inclusive learning for all children. And in every role, I focused on building systems that center what's best for children in all settings. And I will pass it on to Madeline.
Hi, good morning. My name is Madeline Gillespie. I'm the coordinator of Prenatal to School Entry Partnership Development and Alignment. I work out of the Somerville Family Learning Collaborative, which is the Family Engagement and Community Engagement Department of the Somerville Public Schools. I'm a clinical social worker by training, and I've worked in schools and then had two young children of my own and learned more and more about the early childhood field and became really interested in supporting families in this stage of their life. So that's how I came, and I'll pass it to Kathy.
Hi, good morning. I'm Kathy Treglia. I'm the community liaison at Little People's College. We are a private, very large early childhood center that's been in existence for 45 years with 1,000+ children in care at 7 different centers. And I started way back when there were no public school teaching jobs, and the YMCA scooped me up. And after 30 years there, I've been enjoying my last 10 years here at Little People's. I think that's everybody, right? That's in our group?
Yes.
So we can go right in.
Shall I start, Amy?
Sure.
Sure. So in March, a group of educators and providers from New Bedford got into vans and went up to Somerville to talk shop with another town, another city that was similar to New Bedford. As a United Way, we're always interested in knowing what's happening around the state. And we have a strong interest in early education and care. And so we meet with people in coalitions. And one of the people I met with was Titus Remedius, who I'm looking at on this call from Strategies for Children. And Titus and I got to talking about our dynamic new superintendent, not so new, Andrew O'Leary, who is very interested in strengthening early education and care here in New Bedford. Andrew is also on the call. And Titus and I started talking a little bit about Somerville. I knew Somerville because there was a study done a couple of years ago that sort of outlined the city and its collaborative abilities. And there are a lot of similarities between Somerville and New Bedford. They're both Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative grant recipients. There's a strong partnership with the CPPI grants in the local public schools. Somerville has the Capuano Early Childhood Center, and the New Bedford Public Schools is opening up a new early education center at Parker School this fall. But Somerville also had things like the Children's Cabinet, which really improves collaboration and cross-sector solution building. And it has this really great Somerville Hub, which is an online resource for parents. So we thought there were things that we could learn from Somerville, and maybe Somerville would even learn a few things from New Bedford. So with that, we jumped on a couple of vans and went up to Somerville. So I'm going to toss it to Kathy, and she's going to talk a little bit about the goals while we were there.
Thanks, Sarah. So in addition to being a CPPI partner, I also am a co-chair of our Birth to Three group here in New Bedford. And we're a committed group of providers and agencies, and we're family focused on the birth to third grade. And we were trying to streamline all of the work that we're doing to eliminate some of the redundancy. And we heard about Somerville, and we wanted to see what we could learn from them to maybe bring to New Bedford. And we wanted to look at, how did they organize their infrastructure, and who's at the table, and what does the organizational chart look like, all of the things that they were able to explain to us at our visit. And then, of course, the big question was the funding. How did they braid all of these funding sources from different agencies? You have the city, you have DESE, et cetera. And they did help explain that a little bit to us, although we're going to have another call after today, because that's something we're still trying to learn to manage. And then how do they maintain equal partnerships between early education providers and the public school, and be inclusive of all of these other agencies that are trying to help these families with young children? So that was really the goal. And then, of course, as Sarah said already, to visit their early education center as we're building one here in New Bedford. I think I hit the buttons, and so I'll pass it on to Kathleen.
Thanks so much, Kathy. And from Somerville's side, we were so excited. New Bedford approached us, and Titus helped us collaborate together and get the conversation going. And one of the things that we were excited for is we approached the exchange with genuine curiosity. We wanted to learn about New Bedford. We wanted to learn about their new early education center. We wanted to connect with peers, and we were equally, it was an equal commitment to high quality, equitable learning for all children. And so we knew that coming together, it would help us really provide the best outcomes for children in both of our communities. And I really do think that our time together is a powerful reminder of how much we can gain when two communities come together and share and learn from each other. So what we experienced during the call went beyond sharing of ideas. It was really the spirit of collaboration, and it also challenged us as a community to reflect about our own ideas and practices. And we left energized and with a commitment to keep the collaboration and the conversation going forward. So to tell you a little bit more about the visit, Madeline's going to share what actually happened.
Great.
Great. So we started off with the New Bedford group going on a tour of the Capuano Early Childhood Center, which houses many pre-K and kindergarten classrooms. And we were lucky enough to have the principal and vice principal take folks on a tour. And then we had our meeting in the library, where we had each group do a little presentation about their community, their landscape, things that are going well, challenges and barriers. And then we had discussion around that. And then a lot of, after that, informal conversations at tables with lunch and mingling. In terms of our participants, we had a really robust group, and we tried to have matches on each group side. So we had folks from the city, from the schools, We were lucky enough to have both superintendents attend. We had CPPI coordinators, center directors were there, and then a lot of other folks who have been just instrumental in the early childhood landscape in their own communities. And so we matched people up at their tables for those discussion pieces. And then we'll move into our takeaways from the visit.
Madeline,
So
can you just give a sense of
yeah.
how many actual people were there?
Yes. Yeah. So there were roughly a close, I think, to about 25 to 30 people there at the end. Yeah. So our guest list grew and grew and grew, and
Right.
we just kept thinking, oh, this would be a great person, or oh, this person really wants to learn from this person here. So we kept it started small and it kept growing and growing. Yeah.
I think important to say that both the superintendent from New Bedford and Somerville were there. There
Right.
was really strong representation from both cities. There
Mhm.
were CPPI partners, both Head Start programs attended. It was a really good strategies for children attended. It was just a really good cross section of city, school, providers, people who understand and know their early education space really well.
Great. And both New Bedford and Somerville have CPPI grants. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's great.
Yes, and we were talking about it to EEC, and so they also sent a representative to the meeting because they were really excited about two CPPI partners or
Right.
two CPPI communities coming together and talking about the grant itself and our implementation of the grant.
And Titus, do you want to give a little bit of just context about where we sit as a kind of a state organization thinking about how all these pieces fit together? And then if folks have questions, please add them to the chat.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. Also, like the collaboration aspect, relationships, getting to know each other and see how many partners are collaborating. I think that's like the one of the core benefits of doing this. It's like the more you collaborate, the better things tend to be in a local community. Um, the other piece I would mention is just this has to go beyond just CPPI, and both communities do go beyond CPPI, right? Like, so they use the CPPI grant, but then around that grant, either with things that happened before CPPI or because of CPPI, you can stitch together a whole um, early childhood local infrastructure. Really, that's what we want to see in every community with different programs and services. But it takes collaboration, it takes partnership, into the city, into the schools, into the other nonprofits and other institutions in the community. And I think both New Bedford and Somerville do that really well. Uh, so that's what we want to see happen. And we'll do whatever we can to keep advocating for those conditions because it's not like every community should have to figure this out on their own. We're here to
Right.
help however we can.
Great.
Amy, we had a few takeaways.
Great.
Kathleen, do you want to start there?
Sure. I was thinking that stepping outside our daily routines and engaging with an external audience always allows us to get that big picture view and to see our work from a new lens. And it's a bit like walking in your home with a guest, and you're like, oh, you suddenly notice the small details that you might have overlooked. And so I do believe that was one of the big takeaways. And personally, I wanted to share that I received an unexpected insight from a New Bedford colleague about my leadership and the legacy I'm leaving in Somerville. And I doubt that she probably realized the profound impact she had on a simple observation about my leadership, but it stayed with me and it shaped how I think about my work moving forward. And I'll pass it on to my colleagues for more takeaways.
Sure. So I think what's unique is that the trip sort of got conceived in this conversation between United Way and Strategies for Children, organizations that are not directly involved in the early education day to day. And some of it was the Commonwealth Children's Fund's report on Somerville that I had read a couple of years prior and Titus had reminded me about, like this this philanthropic organization that had, invested in a fellow to work in the ecosystem of Somerville. So I think one of the takeaways is that, these organizations that are kind of working within the ecosystem, not necessarily directly with children, also have this really important role to play. At the time, United Ways were being supported through the CPPI grants to be the community liaison. So I saw this very much as our role to be able to kind of bring communities from different parts of the state together to talk about what's working and, what they're hoping to improve. I'm going to toss it to Kathy.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that it was nice to have almost a neutral agency to kind of initiate this whole, so there was no self-serving motives to this whole event, which, everybody had a stake in it, but we had a neutral party helping us and leading it and investing in our vision. So we really appreciated that from United Way. And we just were looking for things that we could do differently or better. And I think one of the takeaways that we had too is that we had some affirmation that we're already doing a lot of really good things in New Bedford. So I have to toot our own horn because we've been doing it for a long time. And sometimes you just get caught in your own little world. And when we were able to do some comparisons with what we're already doing, we're on the right track and we're really close to getting there. So that felt really good. It's not a big bite, it's just little bites. And I don't know, Madeline had something too.
Yeah, because shout out to Titus again. He created a survey for our participants after the meeting to hear what people learned, what questions do people still have, and overwhelming, we got a lot of feedback just how great it was to have an in-person connection with people doing similar work and their tangible outcomes, but also just intangible. And like we said, affirmation and really nice to talk to people having similar challenges, but a different way of going about it. And then also being in the Capuano, in the Early Childhood Center was really important and meaningful to folks. One question that came up was, how do we continue this connection or build upon this going forward? What's next? So we're still thinking about next steps. But one thing that's already happened is sharing some materials that we've had, that came up maybe just referenced during the meeting, and then sharing those so that teams can have real time to dig into those and see how they apply to each community. And then I'll let Sarah talk about some other next steps.
Sure. I mean, I think, Kathleen, you talked a little bit about the braided funding that, in the end, it was kind of like, how is this all sustainable? And what's really clear is it's obviously CPPI funding, which both cities enjoy, but then that there are these other resources that allow it to happen. And without those resources, as we just passed the big, beautiful bill, and we know that the governor's just signed the state budget. And, she said, this, depending on what happens with federal funding, we'll see sort of where this all shakes out. That braided funding is critical to this work. And so obviously everyone on this call is keeping a really close eye on that. And I think, Madeline, you've already said this, we're kind of figuring out what next steps are, but the survey really helped us with some feedback and some thoughtful follow-up. Andrew Leary, can I put you on the spot? I mean, you were there, you're key to our work in New Bedford. Anything you want to add in here?
Certainly. Good morning, all. Andrew Leary, Superintendent of New Bedford Schools. What a great trip we had to Somerville. So grateful to the team and such a broad-based team as well. It was really exciting to learn the history of the Capuano and then see what's in place right now with Kathleen and Chris and all the team there. It was just wonderful. Obviously, putting on my planning hat right now, I do think that there are very significant and sustained investments that have been made in Somerville that we need to talk about in New Bedford as well, in terms of investments going forward in what broadly we would call child supporting infrastructure, but more specifically, not once we do get the Parker Early Childhood Center up and running, that really creates a hub and a model that we can build on. I do think, given New Bedford's, not to get into municipal finance, but given New Bedford's current fiscal capacity and structures, there is some slight room there. But if we can consider that New Bedford as a city will grow in terms of its demographics, in terms of the local economy, notwithstanding what's going on in the federal government right now, I think we need to be optimistic about New Bedford's growth. And as that growth happens, we need to ask what is within the city budget. So the school department has a budget which, as you know, is reliant on state aid. However, there is an independent city budget as well, and currently that's somewhat stretched. However, there has to be a forward-looking plan for child supporting infrastructure, for capital investments, and those set-asides as well, at least as a proposal. That's what I see in Somerville. Some of the conversation did touch on that as well. As Somerville grew, you did see direct municipal investment above and beyond what was in the school system, and then the braided approach as well, with the school system also focusing, and then additional federal and philanthropic support is unlocked as well. So definitely still thinking about all of that as we left Somerville, but just a great visit overall, so I'm very appreciative.
And Andrew, can you just tell us a little bit about you? Because you've been in New Bedford for a while. Just tell us about kind of how where you.
Sure. Yeah, I got one of those automatic certificates that New Bedford sends out. It was signed by the superintendent. It said, "Congratulations on 20 years in New Bedford." That was really nice of him to sign his auto signature to that. So I've been with New Bedford for 20 years, and in various roles, teaching role originally, and then running our grant programs, our finance and operations, and now superintendent. I have three of my boys, actually one just graduated at New Bedford High School as well. So we're all in as a Whaler family, and we are very excited, a very exciting time right now in terms of all those federal investments. We opened a central kitchen. I encourage everybody to check that out. A central kitchen for a USDA program was opened last week, upcoming. We have a school-based health center opening as well. So amid all of what's going on right now in terms of divestment, we're really eager to maintain and show the value of investments. And the Parker School is an example of that. I'll be visiting there today to see how the plumbing is going and checking in with the staff to see how the hiring is going. We're very excited about Christine Robinson as our early childhood manager. She's on the call as well. A very experienced educator in this space as well. So I think very optimistic and exciting times in New Bedford, although we are all in this space aware of the challenges right now.
Thank you. Christine Ross has a question. I have a question about the move. Oh, no, my chat is okay. I have a question about the move toward early childhood educations for pre-K or pre-KK as we expand high quality early education with the local school district. I understand there can be efficiencies for serving children. Oh my gosh, if it's serving children development and children with service and assessment, but it strikes me that compared to having a pre-K in the school, it introduces or reinforces a transition for children that disjoints the early education pre-K to grade 3. So that schools can fully understand what children have learned and how they have developed in pre-K. One of the hypotheses about preschool fade out is that kids who get a preschool boost are in classrooms that don't appreciate what they're starting from. So I think this idea, and I would caution the move toward, because I think we are watching communities really try to figure out how to best serve children and families in all different settings. But this question comes up every single time we talk about CPPI, preschool expansion, thinking about this. So can you talk about kind of what it has looked like in each of your communities to kind of do that landscape analysis, understand where children are, what families want and need, and just kind of how we think about the mixed delivery system?
Yeah, Chris, I really appreciated Christine's comment there. Christine, you nailed it. You
Right.
really understand both. And I don't think one model is necessarily better than the other. And I think what we need to think as an overall early childhood community is how do we support families with choice and with access? And an early childhood center does support having all the resources in one place. But then also having pre-K in your local elementary school is absolutely critical for siblings, for transition, for the infrastructure of that school as well. And then where does family childcare providers come in, center-based providers, and all of that needs to be considered when you're thinking about a community's infrastructure for early childhood. And in Somerville, we're doing all of that. We have some pre-K classrooms in our elementary schools. We have our Capuano Early Childhood Center, and we're partnering with our center-based providers. We're moving into partnering with our family childcare providers, but we're not quite there. So that is our growth here in Somerville.
Yeah. And I think the model is there with CPPI. So the more we can expand that and the services that includes, there will be more of a level playing ground too.
I see Maria Nakti is on the call, who is at Boston Public Schools, and we watched Boston kind of go through this incredible, transformation of serving 3 and 4 year olds in Boston, both in community-based programs, public schools, and now family child care providers. And we know that figuring out the blending and the braiding and how the funds all work together is a critical part of that. But we also know in Boston, the school district has taken over some of that funding through the mixed delivery system. So kind of, I think that's the other piece that, and what Kathleen just said and Kathy said is like, it's about the local community figuring it out, but having enough state and federal support to make it work. Let me see. Yes, okay. Kyla says we also have some planning grantees partnering with family childcare. BPS has included 14 family childcare providers. And so one of the things we've been thinking about here at Strategies for Children, we learned from our friends in Georgia where they sponsored a bus trip where they took legislators and teams of people, elected officials, appointed officials on a bus tour to watch and see how communities have done this. So Marissa is on vacation this week, but it is her policy dream to do this in Massachusetts, to have a way of sharing some of these lessons learned. What we have found from communities is kind of what you heard here. It's really about sharing best practices, that it's a two-way street, that not one community has figured everything out, and how do we kind of take the best of communities, learn the lessons, and sometimes we know that we learn like, oh, we made this decision, we're revisiting that and adjusting the way that we're doing things. So I think to have CPPI funding to really think about some of this experimentation and innovation to what's going to work in your own community. So we will continue to highlight and feature CPPI communities on the call. We know that the commissioner has been on the road visiting them. We know Sandwich is one that we're interested in, featuring on the 9:30 call. So if you're in a community that's doing some of this work, please connect with us. We want to hear the story. And really think about how we can continue these conversations. Appreciate the questions in chat. We will send, BPS always welcomes visitors. Yes, Marie has sponsored many visitors. The other thing that Boston has done is the shared curriculum, professional development, coaching. So Marie, maybe we'll have you guys back on the call to kind of highlight, especially around the family child care work. Oh, and Kyla says we'll have a big CPPI webinar. See, so that's good. We have lots of them going. Any last words from New Bedford and Somerville? We're so glad that folks could join us today.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to give a shout out to Kyla because she was in the New Bedford Somerville gathering, and that commitment is really meaningful, and we appreciate it.
That's great. So we did record this call, so tell your friends and family to check it out on the 9:30 call YouTube channel. We'll have sharing the mic tomorrow, and please keep us posted of the work that's happening in communities. We want to amplify the work that's happening. And as Titus said, we're happy to do whatever connection, context setting that we can. So thanks, thanks, Ashley. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you tomorrow on the 9:30 call.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.